They come from two different worlds, but they were made for the same purpose: war. In Naruto, the Beiju weren't born evil. They were born powerful, cut from the body of a god, scattered across the land, and treated like curses rather than creatures. Every village turned them into weapons, living nuclear bombs sealed inside of hosts, paraded around as deterrents under the watch of the Kage. Their existence alone was enough to force peace or escalate conflict. Now shift to One Piece, where the world government hides behind the word justice. The Admirals, polished, terrifying, and loyal, are the Navy's final answer to any threat. Just like the Biju, they're rarely sent to protect. They're sent to remind the world who's in charge. The Biju serve the villagers, the Admirals, the Celestial Dragons. Both are pawns for a system that claims to want peace, despite thriving on fear and war. So what happens when those systems collide? Well, in today's video, that's exactly what we'll find out. So the first thing I want to start out with in this discussion is basically just going over why the power of the Beiju and the Nine Tails is vastly overrated. To begin with, most people base the Biju's AP off of a singular calc made by Webcam Parrot, which has the result of the explosion caused by the Nine Tails and Eight Tails at Multi-Continental. However, what a lot of people who reference this calc don't realize is that the reason the result was so high is simply because Parrot used the curvature of the Earth to determine the explosion's size, which is basically just backscaling from the size of the planet and saying that blast took up at least like 10% of the world's volume/diameter, which I don't know if I should have to tell you this, but that's completely fucking retarded. The blast was nowhere near the size of the actual planet, so I don't know why people would even think that or assume that when creating their calcs. I've also seen some other calcs for Beiju bomb feats that range anywhere from country to continental level, depending on which you use. When it comes to these calcs, they're also flawed, not because they're using the curvature of the Earth like in Webcam Parrot's calc, but simply because they're scaling the size of craters and explosions based off inaccurate pixel measurements, saying things like the Eight Tails is 60 meters tall, therefore the crater he created was 2,000 meters in diameter, things like that. It's a lot of math, yap, but essentially the huge problem with a lot of these Naruto calcs is just that they assume size to be absolutely fucking bananas and very inconsistent with canon measurements we've been given by Kishimoto. With that said, if you take like accurate pixel measurements into account, which would usually involve basing the crater size off of the Biju's height and scaling the Biju's height relative to someone like Gambunta, who's stated to have a canon height of 17 meters, then we get more accurate results for the Biju bombs that are around large mountain to island level, depending on whether you think the blasts are polarization or vaporization, which you could argue till you're blue in the face. I just wanted to mention either or. So for the Biju's power, even including Kurama, who is 5 times stronger than the average Biju, their AP comes out more or less to the mountain ranges of power to the island ranges of power. Nothing ridiculous like multi-continental. There is a calc for the combined Biju bomb of the Eight Tails and Nine Tails that gets it to like country level based off of how much energy was produced in it reaching the clouds, which are like kilometers in the sky. But even then, that's like a Biju bomb that takes the combined power of the Eight Tails and Nine Tails and an extreme charge. So for the Biju's power level, depending on where you want to put it, it would be mountain level to island level to country level at max. Now, some of you may be thinking that I'm a complete fucking retard and that you're going to defeat every point I say by bringing up the fact that the Nine Tails is stated to be able to turn the world into ash, apparently. However, if you look at the raw translation of the scan, it's the kanji used is for society and not the term planet. So I don't know how people turn society into planet. And even if you put it in the scope of society, there's genuinely no context given for how the Nine Tails is going to do this. People act like, oh, he's going to use a Beiju bomb, even though the biggest Beiju bombs we've seen aren't even like the size of the Leaf Village. So I don't know how he's going to create one the size of the fucking planet. I just always found this type of scaling to be disingenuous and fucking retarded. The Nine Tails is not planetary, and you can't prove that he is. And then trying to use boo-boo ass calcs like Parrot's calc to reinforce your idea that the Nine Tails is planetary is even more fucking dumb, because that calc is awful. So to reiterate, no, the Nine Tails is not planetary and not multi-continental, and neither are the Biju. I've also seen this new meta where people try to point out the fact that Orochimaru was stated to be able to destroy a small country in one of the Leaf Village meetings. But the problem with that meta just goes back to the same thing with the Nine Tails, where we have no context or actual feats to quantify Orochimaru's destruction of the country. It could just be what he did to the Leaf Village, where he attacks it with an entire fucking army. Or anything. Literally, it could be anything. But basically, the problem is that we don't know. So for us to assume what we don't know and then try to derive scaling for that makes no fucking sense. So no, characters in Naruto are not country level based off statements either. And if you think I'm picking on Naruto in particular when it comes to scaling like this, I'm absolutely not. Because getting into One Piece, there's the same problem with the Whitebeard statement. Sengoku says that Whitebeard has the capability to destroy the world, which is a cool statement, but without us having the feats of how he's going to destroy the world, or if he's going to destroy the world in one hit or what have you, we basically cannot tell how good of a feat or how to quantify this feat in any sort of way, and it just becomes a hype statement. Now, a lot of you One Piece fanboying retards will probably try to bring up stupid shit like the earthquakes being affecting other parts of the Grand Line / New World, or Suru mentioning the fact that she can't run from Whitebeard. These do not prove that he has planetary ranges of power or that he could just one-shot the Earth if he so chooses to. All it does is give us more hype for a statement that we cannot quantify unless we have proper feats. And in my opinion, you don't even need Whitebeard to be planetary for this statement to make sense, since just like with the Nine Tails statement, if you look at the raw kanji, it can be interpreted as society rather than a planet. Therefore, Whitebeard having the ability to just go around destroying the world and sinking islands is consistent with the narrative, so I don't see why people take this statement hyper literally and say that Whitebeard can one-shot the Earth, but then decide that it's completely stupid and wrong for someone to think that him going around destroying the surface of the Earth would also qualify him to be a world destroyer. Now, the other meta that I've seen people use to purposefully wank One Piece is the Don Shinjiao splitting an ice continent meta, and I've already gone over this multiple times in other videos, but for one, we don't know the size of the fucking continent, so we'd have to assume it, which is just bad in and of itself. And then for two, Don Shinjiao, it's not as though Don Shinjiao completely obliterated or vaporized the continent, or the ice continent in this case. What he did was split it down the middle with an attack, which is basically akin to me cutting a fucking board in half with my hand while the board sits on something. All he's doing is breaking something in half. The energy required to break a continent in half would be massively below the energy required to nuke a continent, which would actually put you in that continent level. I've seen calcs for it that assume the size is the size of Antarctica, which I think is a baseless assumption, but let's say you think it's true. That's a continent right there. And the results are still like large town level to city to mountain level. Nowhere near continental like you morons like to believe. Like with the Beiju though, I have to give an actual range where I think the Admirals scale to. And this is pretty easy in my opinion, since Luffy, through his fight with Kaido, is able to split the skies, which is consistently calced in the country level of power, and that would apply directly to Luffy's AP since it's the raw kinetic energy produced by his fist. And then we see characters like Kizaru easily being able to block Luffy's attacks in base. So to say that the Admirals are country level physically is not a stretch, to say the least. This is even more consistent when you realize top tiers like the Yonko clashing in One Piece usually has country level results in terms of the sky split. And even in Marineford, Whitebeard is able to produce country-level quakes consistently, and Akainu is literally able to clash evenly with this quake fruit. So both physically and through devil fruit powers, the Admirals are at least country level. Switching into speed when it comes to the Naruto verse, I'm not even gonna get too heavily into debunking a lot of their metas. And instead, I'm going to quite literally be highballing by taking the statement of the Raikage being light speed at face value, even though you could argue that this statement is literally just a simile. And with me doing that, that would basically just put every Biju aside from the Nine Tails at light speed maximum, considering the Raikage is the fastest shinobi in the world aside from Minato, who died. And his speed would just represent the peak of the verse, essentially, in terms of normal ninja pre-six pads and 10 tails amps and shit like that. And even the 9 tails probably isn't that much faster than the Raikage, considering we only really have a feat of KCM Naruto dodging the V2 Raikage's fist, not him actively keeping up with the V2 Raikage in combat. But even then, the V2 Raikage is only some unknown multiplier faster than light. It's not even a multiplier, it's just some vague level of speed above the speed of light. And again, that's just us taking the statement at face value and not arguing that it's a simile. I know a lot of people will try to argue that there were a bunch of light speed statements and feats pre-Raikage, but even if we do consider those, we don't know how much faster these people are compared to the Raikage, if they're faster at all. So it doesn't even matter. Even if you took like the whack mistranslated statement of the Anbu being light speed, because the fact that the Raikage is faster in stated light speed, it literally wouldn't matter how whatever headcanon multiplier you think the Raikage is above the Anbu ninja. Basically, the peak of the verse would still be capped at light speed pre 6 paths and 10 tail shit. As for the Admiral's level of speed, like with Naruto, I'm not really going to go too much into debunks about massively faster than light One Piece. For the purposes of this video, all you need to understand is that Kizaru is, without beyond a shadow of a doubt, faster than light. And there's multiple characters capable of blocking and intercepting his light, so they're also faster than light. And then the Admirals are literally just stated to be fucking relative to each other and shown to be relative to each other throughout the series. So all the Admirals should just be faster than light at an extreme low ball. As for abilities, when it comes to the Biju, almost all of them are just giant kaijus capable of, spitting out nuclear blasts. And even the Biju with Kekkei Genkai, which are, I guess you can consider them hacks, your more typical hacks. The Four Tails uses Lava Style, which isn't like, it's not like Genjutsu or any super hack. It's literally just him using chakra to increase his AP durability and destructive capacity. So that barely counts as a hack. And then there's Shukaku, the only one with actual real hacks, Magnet Style and Sealing, which could be useful. And then there's like the Three Tails, who can use Water Style, which is big for this matchup. Oh yeah, and the Five Tails, which can use Boil Release, which again is just used to increase physical stats. So yeah, literally every single Biju is just like a giant raging monster with the capability to produce blasts of mass destruction. There's not really any hacks there. As for the Admirals, I really wouldn't say it's much different, considering their devil fruits are just ways of increasing their physical stats. But they do have Haki, Armament Haki, Advanced Armament Haki in this case. We see them using it. It's like almost undisputable that the Admirals have Advanced Armament Haki. That literally attacks internal organs without people needing to even make contact with you. So the Admirals have textbook durability negation. And then they also have Observation Haki and potentially Future Sight, which is just like gives them unbelievable levels of precognition to where they're able to sense characters coming from off panel and shit like that. So the precog is almost like Sharingan level. If you want to make a comparison, it might be even better. And then they also have their devil fruits, which are capable of causing massive AoE destruction. Like Kuzan is able to freeze a giant portion of the ocean in a sea beast, which is honestly comparable, like might be comparable in size to a Biju. And then Akainu is able to launch magma fists across an entire island. Kizaru has all his light attacks. and clones and things like that. So the Admirals don't have like a ton of hacks, but the hacks that they do have are extremely, reliable and can do a bunch of work. They also have Logia intangibility, which despite the fact that you can blitz Logias and they're not untouchable. When you are a Logia and you're faster than someone, you basically are. So depending on how we feel about speed in the end section, that might be a decisive thing right there. Now that I've mentioned conclusions though, I might as well make mine. And to be honest with you, this fight isn't close at all. Like the Admirals can be argued to be both stronger and faster than the Biju, and then they have the hacks necessary, like the AoE necessary to just kill Biju with massive attacks. On top of that, with observation hockey and Logia intangibility, it's kind of hard to argue that the Biju would even fucking touch the Admirals, including Naruto, who you could maybe argue is faster than Light. But yeah, even including him, I don't even see a scenario where the Biju end up touching the Admirals because they're faster and have observation hockey. On top of that, even though I didn't mention it earlier, Green Bull could also come in clutch here and literally just, drain the vitality out of every single Biju with fucking roots. You know what I mean? So, almost no scenario favors the Biju in this fight. The Admirals have the AP, speed, and area of effect to completely obliterate a Biju, and it wouldn't even be close.